Well, the Florida Gators have officially released their depth chart for their season opener against Utah this upcoming Thursday. Um, Here's their depth chart right here. They have the offense, the defense, and then underneath is the special teams, and then underneath both categories, both columns, excuse me, is the injury report. So, offense, the Florida Gators, starting off with the wide receivers, they have Ricky Pearsall as wide receiver number one, which is not really a surprise. And then, if you notice on the screen, the way the starting rotation is going to work is that the first player's name in each box, like Ricky Pearsall, Caleb Douglas, and Khalil Jackson, those are going to be the starters. And then the names underneath them, like Eugene Wilson and Nate Mizell, they will be Ricky's backups. And Marcus Burke and Eddie Jean are Caleb Douglas's backups. And same thing with Jacobian uh, Frazier's and Taylor Spierto. They're backing up Khalil Jackson. So right away, eye opener right away is that Khalil Jackson is going to be starting for Florida with Ricky Pearsall and Caleb Douglas. Um, if Khalil Jackson is starting for Florida, then that tells me he must have had a really good spring and fall camp practice. The fact that he and spring, summer, and fall camp to earn a starting spot over newcomers like Eugene Wilson, Aiden Mizell, and AD Jean. So the fact that he was able to get a starting matchup is shows that he apparently made some progress that the Florida Gator coaches were really happy with. And he will be starting out there with Ricky Pearsall and Caleb Douglas. Caleb Douglas uh, been at Florida for a little bit. Oh, excuse me, he was a freshman last year for Florida, so he was able to snag a starting spot. Had quite a bit of competition. Florida improved their receiving core with their previous recruiting class, so it's nice to see Caleb Douglas get his starting spot. Uh, Going to be real interesting to see what happens with Khalil Jackson. And then at the offensive line, I apologize if you can't really see it because I'm using the desktop to record this video, but I have Florida's depth chart on my cell phone. At left tackle, Austin Barber is going to be the starter. At left tackle, that's not really a surprise. Behind him is Jordan Herman and Bryce Levitt. Bryce Levitt, who was also a also listed at Florida's right tackle spot, third string tackle. So I guess he's going to be the swing tackle in need for depth. At left guard, Richie Leonard the fourth is going to be starting at left guard, and which is interesting to me because sorry, I had to yawn there. If you ask me, I would have thought it would have been Kanaje Harris to start at left guard. I was really happy with what I was hearing about Kanaje Harris throughout the spring, summer, and fall. That Florida liked what they saw when they needed him to step in whenever the offensive line was a little bit dinged up. But I guess Richie Leonard held him off just long enough to get that starting left guard spot. Um, Behind Richie Leonard is Kanaja Harris, of course. Kanaja Harris, who's also the backup right guard behind Michael Mazuka. I'll get to him in a minute. So apparently, if there's an injury at the guard spot, Kanaja Harris will get the head nod to come in and be the replacement. And behind Kanaja Harris, at the as the third string left guard is Christian Williams. Then you go to the center position. Um, it says Kingsley Egwakon is the starter, but if you see that star right next to his name, that's because he's on Florida's injury report. He's questionable with the lower body injury, and his status is up in the air right now in terms of if he's going to play for Florida or not. If he doesn't play, backup center Jake Slaughter will take his place, and if he were to get hurt, Kanaja Harris would be the center. So I guess Florida really likes what they're seeing from Kanaja Harris to where if there's an emergency, they can rely on him. Then you go to right guard position. I already mentioned Kanaja Harris as the backup right guard, but Michael Mazuka, he was the starting. He was a long time starting left guard for the Baylor Bears over the previous couple of years. Was one of the highly touted interior offensive linemen in the transfer portal back when the transfer portal opened last winter of last year, and he chose to go to Florida. And behind Kanaja Harris for that third string right guard spot is Jalen Farmer. At starting right tackle, Damian George Jr. Again, not a surprise to me. He was a big acquisition that Florida got from Alabama last year. Behind him is FIU transfer portal audition Lindell Hudson II, or maybe Lindell Hudson Jr. I guess depending on how he's pronounced. At the tight end position, tight end is very up in the air right now in terms of what to expect from Florida's tight ends this season. Dante Zanders apparently might just be the starting tight end, but maybe he could be. I think from what I hear, people Florida like him. The Florida coaches like him as a blocking tight end, so he might be there for rundown situations, which is typically the first two plays of the drive. Then behind him is Hayden Hansen, and Jonathan Odom. Jonathan Odom has been recovering from an injury last year, so I don't expect him to get a lot of snaps early. Tony Livingston is, I guess it would be would be on the opposite end of the tight end of the starting tight end spot, and then Arliss Boardingham is the third string tight end behind Livingston. Quarterback, obviously, you have Graham Mertz. Not really a surprise. He was expected to be the starter the moment he came in. Jack Miller, he has an injury, upper body injury. He's a little questionable. Max Brown has elevated himself uh, to a third QB spot, third string QB spot, and then behind him is a walk on named Michael Leon. I guess he's a graduate. So congratulations to him. And that's it for Florida's quarterbacks position. Then you go to running backs. Florida's biggest strength on offense, obviously, Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne. Those, if you're a Florida fan, you should not be surprised that those are the first two names on the list. And then behind them is Trayon Webb. Florida coaches were planning on having him fourth, but because of the injury to Cam Carroll, they had to bump him up a spot. But I like Florida's running backs, and I like what I saw from Trayon Webb in the spring game. So I'm not too I'm not too concerned about Florida's third string running back spot. Then you go to defense. Remember, Justice Boone towards ACL, so in steps Tyreek Sapp to be the starting, I guess you could say, F rusher. I don't know why they they name these positions the way that they do, but anyways, the F edge rusher, he's going to be first in line at that position. Behind him is Jack Pyburn, Cameron James, and Kelby Collins. I'm a big fan of Kelby Collins. He's a big defensive line recruit. Florida got out of the state of Alabama, beat Nick Saban out for him, so that tells you that there's something about Kelby Collins and that Nick Saban was going after him. You have the nose tackle position. You have Cam Ron Jackson, who was a big transfer from a junior transfer from Memphis, 6'6", 360. Behind him is, of course, fan favorite Desmond Watson, 6'5", 435. Behind them is Jamari Lyons. So there's your nose tackles. In terms of the defensive lineman that's going to be playing right next to Cam Jackson, big Caleb Banks. He's a big transfer from Louisville. Behind him is is listed as Chris McKellen, but he's on the injury report as well with a lower body injury. Behind Chris McClellan would be if Chris McClellan can't play Thursday would be Will Norman. I'm a fan of Will Norman. He's a defensive tackle, freshman defensive tackle that Florida got from the IMG Academy, who also transferred to New Jersey to play his final year of high school football there. So that's Florida's end position at the defensive line. The jack position, I guess that's maybe defensive line or linebackers. So they love using these kind of terms for their front seven guys. Princely Uman Milan. He's a junior, played for Florida for the last couple of years, has a little bit of experience, game time experience, and I guess he would be a rush end for Florida. Behind him is T.J. Searcy, a freshman from the state of Georgia. Then, of course, you have the aforementioned Jack Pyburn. At linebackers, it appears that the two starting linebackers would be Scooby Williams and Shamar James. Behind Scooby Williams is Terhada Mitchell and Derek Ringo, and behind Shamar James is Manny Nunnery, who is a transfer from Houston, and Jaden Robinson, who is a freshman from South Carolina. So those are Florida's linebackers. I'm really excited for from what I'm going to see from Shamar James. I mean, I said it before. Shamar James, if you look at my breakdown of Florida's roster, Shamar James, I'm a big fan of what I'm going to see out of him this year. I'm expecting big things from him. You know, he made the SEC All Freshman team last year, and he was a rotational guy. So to see him get a starting position, it puts a smile on my face because I know that he'll do well, considering how well he played in a rotational um, aspect. We're gonna go to the secondary at the star position, which I guess is kind of like hybrid nickel corner safety. Jaden Hill would be the starting star player, and then behind him would be Jadarius Perkins, and then at third string would be Sharif Denson, freshman that they Florida got in a really good defensive back class last year. A good defensive back class that appears to have already produced a starter, and I'm gonna get to him and his name in a minute. Jason Marshall Jr. Uh, multiple year starter for Florida. Started multiple games for Florida the last couple of years. He was a big 5-star recruit, but probably I think it was like one of the only two 5-star recruits that Dan Mullen brought in during his time at Florida. Uh, he's been a starter for Florida every single game. He's by far Florida's best cornerback. Uh, and at the opposite end, it will be Jalen Kimber. He's a big transfer from Georgia that Florida got last year. Started games for Florida looked pretty good. Is expected to have a big year. Kind of had some issue. Kind of had a hand injury that kind of hurt him last year, but I think you might see a pretty good year from the cornerback duo of Marshall Jr. and Kimber. And behind Jalen Kimber is Devin Moore, who was playing some nice football, but then got hurt, so his season got cut short. So it'll be nice to see if Devin Moore is going to be able to push Jalen Kimber for that spot. Maybe if Kimber doesn't play up to par, then maybe Florida will look Devin Moore's way. So Devin Moore is a cornerback I would be keeping my eye on. Then you go to the safety position. The two safeties are Miguel Mitchell and Jordan Castell. And Miguel Mitchell was kind of in a battle with Kamari Wilson for that starting safety spot, and it looks like he's gotten the nod. And then you go to Jordan Castell. He was one of those freshmen in a real good defensive back class that Florida brought in last year. Jordan Castell, Dijon Johnson, uh, Sharif Denson, Jakeem Jackson, and Aaron Gates. So to see one of those guys already get the nod at the starting position, that's good news for the secondary. I think. I was very surprised that R.J. Moulton didn't get the starting spot because he was transferring from Michigan and he had some he had more experience than the rest of the safety group. Played in some games, was part of a very talented Michigan safety room, but because of all the talent they had there, it was hard for him to get on the field. So which is why he came to Florida in the first place. But the fact that Jordan Castell was able to push him and win the starting job shows that maybe there's something special about this Jordan Castell guy. So I can't wait to see it. I don't know what's going to happen with Kamari Wilson, being that he's the backup again. I was hearing some rumblings that Florida was trying to convince him to maybe switch down to linebacker in the summer, but he was apparently not fair that idea. And some people were even saying that he was threatening to go to the transfer portal. I don't know if that's true or not, but if back-to-back years, if he doesn't see the starting nod, I would not be surprised if Kamari Wilson entered the transfer portal after the season was over. Um, so it'll be really interesting to see what's going to happen with number 5, Kamari Wilson. Then you go down to the specialist, uh, starting punter Jeremy Crawshaw. Some people are saying he's a guy to watch for the Ray Guy Award, which is the best punter in the nation. Uh, Behind him is Jacob Watkins. At place kicker, Adam Mihalik won the place kicking position, which means that if Florida is going to go for field goals, he's going to be the number one option, and for kickoffs, it will be his backup Trey Smack. I just talked about Jeremy Crawshaw as the punter. Uh, at returns, it will be Trevor Etienne kick returning and Ricky Pearsall at punt returning. So if you saw last year, there was some good returns that Trevor Etienne provided for Florida at the kick returning position, and apparently Ricky Pearsall impressed the Florida coaches enough to where he is going to return punts for Florida, even though he's the starting receiver. So Billy Napier, if you remember, he comes from the Nick Saban coaching tree because he was a receivers coach under Nick Saban for quite some time. Nick Saban, fans can attest to this, is not afraid to put his starters on the special teams, whether it be returning kicks, like he did with Jalen Waddle, or if he'll be using them as rushers to block the punt. I remember when he had Damian Harris, who was a running back that went to the New England Patriots, he would use Damian Harris to block punts. And Nick Saban is a head coach that truly believes in winning at all three levels of football: offense, defense, and special teams. And he will take his starters on offense and defense and place them on special teams. He is not afraid to do that. And it appears that Billy Napier is not afraid to do the same, and he believes that if Trevor Etienne is your best kick returner, even though he's already going to get a certain amount of carries at the running back position, Trevor Etienne is too special of a talent to keep off the field. So he's going to create more ways to get the ball in Trevor Etienne's hands, and Trevor Etienne is not afraid to return a kick. I remember he had a couple of good kick returns, especially against LSU. Opening kickoff got Florida down to midfield, and against Florida State, he got Florida past the 40-yard line. So he does have some explosiveness and some good abilities as kick return. And Ricky Pearsall at punt return will be interesting to watch. But behind him at punt return is a freshman named Eugene, or excuse me, his it's listed as Eugene Wilson, but apparently he prefers to be referred to as Trey Wilson. So is Eugene Wilson listed on the depth chart, but he prefers Trey Wilson, so I'm going to respect his wishes. He's dynamic, he's shifty, he's athletic. He can provide Florida some excellent juice at the kick return, at the punt return level. So it'll be interesting to see if how long Ricky Pearsall can maintain that punt return job. And that's it. That's the news regarding Florida's depth chart. Uh, they're going to be playing week 1 on the road at Utah, and it should be a fun game to watch.